Aloha, everybody, and welcome to Kenpo Conversations with Mr. Scott Higgins with Cigar here on the top of Sentinel Dome in Yosemite National Park. We have Half Dome in the back, and we have a beautiful waterfall. We actually have a 360 view to all of Yosemite up here. So, Scott, I wanted to ask you a Kenpo question here while you are enjoying your cigar. So when you think about, you talk a lot about the technique within the technique. Like, how can you use that concept to develop some strong basic foundations in your Kenpo?
Well, the technique is built on techniques, multiple techniques, and which are basics. You know, and we learn all these basics in the beginning. Although some people do not teach the basics, and I think they really should. You know, when you're doing a technique in itself is basically a reverse punch, or rather a punch. You have to fashion the fingers into the hand, and you lock it in with the thumb. And you learn this. That's a technique. It's a technique about how to do something, right? And you have combinations of these things. This is a technique. How you're gonna punch is a technique. Okay. What you're going to use, you learn to use the first two knuckles, right? You learn how to right around in this area of the body, around your side, and then you start turning it over, and you have the three different positions, which is basically an uppercut, and then you go into a vertical, and this is 3/4 of the way, and then full extension. And you also have the inverted. You continue on. So I was kind of an interesting thing. I was over in Europe I was talking to Mr. Mahoney, and he was saying when he punches on one side of the face, it'll be like this. And if he punches on the other side, he'll punch this way. Because it is true, because you don't want to strike with your small hand. So it really depends on which side of the face. It was kind of an interesting take on that. But all of these this is all a technique. And people they don't look at it like that. They don't teach it like that. All our techniques, you can pick any technique you want. It starts off with something. It starts off with if it's a block, if it's a parry. These are techniques. So you learn how to develop these. It's a basic. It's one basic here. If you do reversing mace, there's a basic of learning how to do an inward parry, and then doing a outward parry with the left hand, inward with the right, outward with the left, and then you put them together. So these are multiple. You can simply use the single parry, or you can double parry. Sometimes you use just the outward parry. So I think it's important that each of these things is looked at. That is this correct? Is this correct? If I do this and I put this, and then we do maybe a back knuckle, right? And that motion itself is a technique. See, the fist has to be in a certain position. You want to develop some power. You have a little torque in the wrist. You have the body. You have the shoulders. You have the waist. The whole body moving together, trying to synchronize that to maximize your effect. And these are things that a lot of people will just take it for granted that the student knows, especially in the very beginning. You learn the yellow belt technique. Certainly you have to show them how to do the basics, kicks, all that stuff. But then we get into, okay, now you're an orange belt. You're learning these things. So the instructor, whoever is teaching that, assumes that they understand those basics. because many times it is the basic that you're building on throughout the system, and you're introduced to more basics as you go. But many times they'll just say, this is this. Like we have these techniques that will make these bigger circles, and you'll come up over your head, and these type of things. This is a technique that really needs to be developed. So what's the body doing? What's the hand doing? What is this? Am I going way out here, or am I coming up when I'm contouring? See? So where do I stop? Where's my strike? Where's my body position in relationship to the target? So if I understand where the target is, that's why we check. That's one of the reasons Mr. Parker did that, is you check, because at this point I know that I'm striking the neck, whatever technique it is, or at this point. So it's a bang, you know that's here, but also it's a check. And people misunderstand it and misinterpret it. So as far as the basics go, each technique is a combination of basics. And what's important is to really understand that each basic. Don't just, we call the techniques, it's technique, but it's really a series of techniques. It's a combination of those things. And they need to go together. They're not individual things. They're all designed to flow together. And that's one of those things that people, I think, and I see, that people don't pay attention to the detail of those basics. They just assume it's just a technique. I'm going to do 5 swords, and everybody knows it. But if you look at it, really what's going on? This is the hand has to be fashioned in a way that it's going to have a good effect on that. This heel palm, the thumb needs to be tucked in. The wrist has to be extended, so it's like the end of a stick. If it's out here, doesn't mean that you can't, as you strike, dot the I, as Mr. Parker used to say. Heel palm and dot the I, cross the T's. But those type of things, and then it's also the directions, that you're doing. The body, in order to have an effective heel palm, it can't just be the arm itself. The body needs to be involved, right? And the same thing. So you're going one way, the shoulders turn, you have the torquing of the body one way, you have the torquing coming back. So now you're going in the opposite direction. So all of those things are techniques that need to be really examined, and to slow down and to really feel for ourselves what's going on. What is my extension of my body? Where is my limit to my body? I don't want to overreach. I don't want to think that I'm going to be doing. I have to know where's my maximum potential of that. Okay? So I think that's what's one of those things that's I've really noticed over the years, that people, they just 5 swords. Oh, I know that technique. But do they actually know that technique? What is involved within that technique? Within that series of movements. See, that's what's important. It's not about knowing 165 whatever techniques. It's knowing each one intimately, and really looking at it. What is the similarity between this one and this and this? There's similarities in all of those things. We talk about master key moves, all of that stuff. Moves, master key moves. It's moves that can be used in many ways. There's no one master. People get into this mystical sort of stuff. There's no mysticism about any of this. It's very practical, and so That's really what that is. Master key move, basically a move that you can use in many different ways. I mean, an inward block is a master key move. It all depends on what you can do with it. See? And like all of these techniques, whatever it is, it's it's not the technique, and it's not the system or the style that makes the man. It's the man that makes the style, makes the system. You can take a guy that has very little ability physically and put him in a great system, and he's only going to be able to make it work so much. You take a guy with a lot of ability, very athletic, a lot of understanding, you put him in a bad bad system, but he'll make that work. See? So it's really what we all do with what we learn. I learned a lot of different things, but I found Mr. Parker's Kenpo was a very practical, honest way of this. It was very effective, and it's been effective for me on the street.
Great. I think that's really helping me understand like how to take the technique, slow it down, and really look at each detail really intimately to see how is it actually working for me, or how can I maybe adapt some things to even maximize the impact for me as a woman, as a small person.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's why it's even more important that we talk about tailoring the art to the individual. See, we're all individuals, and we have to tailor this to each of ourselves. We don't want to imitate somebody else, and see how they're doing, and then I'll try to do what they're doing. But many times it doesn't work, especially if you have a big difference in size and body composition and weight and all that. So I need to develop that, and we all need to develop our own style, our own method of execution of these things. That we can't, and see, if we're imitating somebody else, we're not being honest with ourselves. If we imitate, we want to, it's okay to emulate an instructor, and you see and that's a very natural thing you do. But eventually you need to transcend that. You need to find your own self. You need to find your own movement. Honestly, and Bruce Lee used to talk about that. He said to express yourself honestly, not lying to oneself. That's what he said. And I remember hearing that in an interview he was doing. And I understood that express ourselves honestly as we are, not as somebody else, but as ourselves. And that's he said that's a very difficult thing to do, and it is a very difficult thing to do, because we need to look within ourselves. How do I understand this thing? What is my interpretation of this? In conjunction with the mechanics that need to be executed, efficiently. So, but we all do it a little bit differently, and that's the way life is. Everybody is different, So we don't want to be the same. I don't want to execute. I learned from Larry Tatum many years ago, and many other Kenpoists. And Larry had his own style. Mr. Parker had his own style. If you look at that, you'll see that all of these people have their own style. And I think it's absolutely important, because that's where it comes from. It comes from inside. We got to go from our head inside. You can learn something intellectually, superficially, but unless you really understand it within yourself, see, you're not going to be able to master it. It needs to be on the inside. It needs to come from the inside, and then you start expressing yourself. Okay. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you very much. Aloha.
Aloha.